I think in our culture, there's so many things that we are trying to balance and not offend and serve God but not offend culture. And what we're reading here is very specific. If you serve God, you're going to have to live differently. Welcome to the Good Life Podcast, where we talk about the search for significance, the pursuit of purpose, and the challenges of our culture. I'm your host, and Daniel Foster, our student pastor, is back with us, and we are honored that you would join us for the Good Life. Daniel, we got a new 4 or 5 weeks for talking about some things. What are we going to be talking about the next several episodes?
The next several episodes will be family. We're going to talk a little bit about family and diving into that and kind of going a little deeper. Talking to parents. We're going to talk to some grads. We're going to talk to just everybody in between.
Yeah, I always like talking about family because I'm somewhere along the way. I expect a story from you.
I've got plenty, man.
A poop story or something from you being a dad. But as our church is in this series called How to Family, I think we live in a jacked up culture, and we're really digging into some how to live a blessed life and how to have a blessed family and live under the blessings of God in your family from the Beatitudes and Matthew. But here's what I want us to do for the next few episodes. I just want us to give some practical advice, not overly spiritual. All this at its core, I think, has underlying spiritual tones. But like sometimes people just ask me, like, how do you do this? What do you do here? Especially with my kids and in marriage. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time on marriage. We just did some time on that. But I thought we'd kick it off today by just talking about parenting. Probably going to take a couple episodes to do this just for the sake of time. But one of the passages that I read in this series is from Joshua chapter 14. I didn't read the whole thing, but I'll read it here. Chapter 24, verses 14 and 15. It says, "Now fear the Lord and serve him with faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates and in Egypt and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose yourselves this day who you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors and who served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living." And then he says this, "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." And I think that 2-verse context stands out to me. Like, you're going to serve something.
Yeah.
And he's saying, quit trying to play like you're serving both. Quit like you either serve God or serve, your ancestors' God. And so I think in our culture, there's so many things that we are trying to balance and not offend and serve God but not offend culture. And what we're reading here is very specific. If you serve God, you're going to have to live differently. It's going to look differently. You're going to have different worldviews. And so I thought we could talk about that a little bit as it relates to parenting for a couple episodes, and then we'll circle back in a few episodes. We'll talk, like, I think you got some advice for graduates, students, young adults, that whole, maybe high school to mid-20s age, because we're in that season of graduation. And so here's what I want, kind of a premise for everything we're going to talk about. There are 3 basic levels at which most people in our world live, and just kind of simplified. And this we're going to apply to families because I think it applies to families as well. Most people live in either survival mode, where we're just getting by. Think about financial situations. People can't pay their bills. They got various, debts.
Just waiting for payday.
Yeah, their marriage is just surviving and hanging on. They're kind of living together. They're roommates, but they're not. They're hoping their kids don't do things stupid. Kind of survival mode. The second one is success. These people are doing pretty well by society standards, and I think what we see is like, okay, they seem to have, maybe they have the right Instagram post, maybe they have the kids are, doing well in school, but you still don't really know, like, all the details of their life. You kind of see what you want to see, what they want you to see, I should say. Maybe they're financially doing okay, they're paying their bills, they got good jobs, kids are, doing well, like I said, in school or in sports or whatever it may be. But the level I want us to get to, and I really want to think about, is living in a lifestyle or a way that leads to significance. And so this is where we're making a difference around us. And I think so often that we parent our kids, we love our spouse in a way that's just kind of selfish or internal and very me focused. And so ideally, as we look at our, conversation around parenting, I want us to stop thinking about having just good kids and raising kids that are, even successful in life. But how do we raise them for a life of significance? And so you can think about this and maybe speak to this a little bit from your childhood growing up, or even from students that you've seen. Most of us have dreams for our kids that stop at level 2. Like, we want our kids to be successful.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it from parents all the time. I hear it from kids all the time. My parents want me to do this and want me to do that. And all of it points to being successful. I also would say we do this for our marriages. We want to have a happy home and successful in this, but like, I want us to move beyond success into significance. And so here's some practical advice, because we say things like we want our kids to grow up and marry somebody, who isn't abusive, who loves them, and who has a good job. Well, okay, that's successful, I guess. I mean, that's a pretty low bar when you think about it.
It's interesting you said that. My phrase kind of for this year was significance over success. Success is all about building me. Significance is about building others. That's
good.
And so what you just said is very interesting too, because parents want their kids to be successful. You hear that all the time. I just want my kids to be successful. And then we wonder why you have teenagers that are so me-centered. Because all you've done is taught them to take care of themselves, to provide for themselves, but you're not teaching them to invest and share with other people and really try to make a significant impact in their circle.
Yeah, and so if we're not careful, success is defined by culture anyway, right? And so that's a cultural standard. And so what I hear, like, we want them to finish college, we want them to get married, we want them to have good jobs, we want them to have babies and grandbabies and all that kind of stuff. But I just want to suggest the idea that there's more to life than that. And there's more than financial stability. There's more than a nice home. There's more than all of that. And the question is, as parents, are we raising kids? Are we parenting and shepherding our kids? And this is the same thing as pastors. I don't want just good church attenders.
Right.
I don't want to just build a church that's several thousand, 5,000, 10,000 people. I want people that love Jesus and are devoted to making a difference in this world.
Yeah, not just people that show up every week. Oh, you've got great church attendance.
Yeah, I mean,
but what are you doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yeah, you're a
Thursday?
good little church attender. You're a good little, teenage boy. Like, no.
So glad you brought your Bible, but what about your neighbors?
Yeah, those are things that I think we have to apply to all areas of our life. And so here's what I want people to just take away from this. A life of significance does not happen by accident. It does not. And so I think you can go and, even I would say you can be successful and it happen. You can catch a break. You can have a rich person say, hey, man, I saw you and I caught you, doing something. I want to hire you. And all of a sudden you get paid 6 figures or more. You can catch a break and be financially successful. You could get an inheritance from your family. There's a lot of ways you could be successful. Your kids grow up and be doctors. I'm not saying you did everything right, but they can. So you can catch a break and be successful. But a life of significance does not happen by accident. It has to be very intentional. And so what I want us to do is talk about some behaviors that positively shape the culture of our home. And so we have to work to create behaviors that lead to significance. And so I just want to give a couple pointers that may do that. And then we'll come back in our next episode and talk about just some family values a little bit. So Julie and I have 2 boys. One just turned 16. It's and I'll apply some of even the recent conversations to his situation, because he's now driving on his own, just got his license. He just got a cell phone.
How do you feel right now? How are you?
I'm fine. I mean, like, at the end of the day, I'm at this point. I think this goes back to a life of significance. I've done what I can do. Yeah. He said to us when he got his phone on his 16th birthday, because, we catch a lot of flack because I just think, we said years ago, we're going to live counterculturally. And that just means we're not going to take our cues at all, not at all, from what culture tells us to do. We're going to look at God's word, look at our family, and we're going to look at everything through the lens of the theology of the gospel and what it means to parent and shepherd our kids and our family and all of those things, and be wise. And so it doesn't matter to me if every kid on the planet had a cell phone at 12, 13, 14. My kid wasn't getting one. And just because he's 16 doesn't mean he gets his license. I mean, him, he's a great kid. All kids have their own, things you got to deal with, but like, he has been very responsible in life, very mature in life, intelligent, and also very involved in church and the things of God. And so when he got his phone at 16, on his 16th birthday, first of all, we asked him, did he want his gift, on his birthday or when we go out? And he's like, I want it on my birthday, which is fine. So, because I think he kind of knew, right? And so we asked him, we said, what is it that, what did you expect to get a phone? He was like, well, you always told me I wouldn't get a phone until I was 16. And he said, if I didn't get a phone, I would wonder what I could do differently to have gotten a phone. Not mad, not anything. So now the question has been the last week, am I going to have social media? 16 years old. And I said, I don't know. It depends on how we can control the filters on it. Because here's the thing. What the principles we're going to apply here are very substantial in a 16-year-old's life. Like, we have Life 360 on our phone. We can check his driving. Some kids hate that. We have Bark on his phone. I mean, like, and he's like, he understands it. And he said, there's a little naivety to the fact that the world's out to get you. Mm-hmm. And so he and I had to say, and I had to show him some things. Like, look, the enemy's going to come and attack you in these ways. And we're going to, my job is to protect and shepherd your heart.
Yeah.
And if I can't shepherd his heart if the enemy gets his mind. Mm. And so, there's all kinds of things. So we're in this season, even a new season. We've been doing this when they were 2, when they were 5, when they were 8, when they were 11. And when they were 13, we didn't just go by society standards. We created behaviors that positively shaped the culture in our home. And so for now, that on a 16-year-old, that looks like screen time. That looks like, filters. That looks like, me getting notifications. That looks like Life 360 when he's on the road. That looks like building responsible, because here's what I think is so vital that we'll talk about maybe it's our next one, but ultimately it's right here. One of the things I want our parents to understand is that our goal in life is not to raise good kids. It's to raise godly kids. Now, here's the thing. Our goal should be to transfer dependence away from ourselves until it solely rests on God. Transfer our kids' dependence. Because when they're born, they're sucking bottles, you're feeding them, you're waking up at night, come on. You're like, I will give them to God right now because I got a baby, right?
So the teething stage.
They totally depend on you as parents. At what point they're going to put their trust and faith and dependence on something, someone, something, some job. My job as a parent is to gradually transfer their dependence off of me and onto God. And so we create the cultures and behaviors. And I think in doing that, you set your child up for a life of significance, not a life of just success. Yeah. And so as you have, how old is Hadley now?
She is 8 months, 8.5 months.
8 months. And every time I see her, she is smiling. She's fun. But then I hear all the horror stories of you taking her doing
She knows
stuff.
how to act in public. I can say that.
Okay. I remember those days of like, golly, everything they need from me. My back hurts all the time. All that kind of, they can't do anything for themselves.
Right.
Nothing. They would literally sit there and starve to death if it wasn't for you, Yeah. And that's fun until it's not fun, right?
That's right.
And so if they're still 15 doing that, you're like, okay, we did something wrong. The problem is culture says teach them to feed themselves, teach them to take a bath, teach them to get a job, teach them to make money, teach them to take care of their family. That's success. Mm-hmm. Significance is so much deeper. Yeah. And so that's what I kind of want us to get into. So a couple thoughts on that. The goal of parenting is to gradually transfer dependence. We said that. Here's the other thing I want to say to parents. First messages are the most potent messages. The most potent. I'm going to say that so people understand what I'm saying. They are the ones that make the most impact. Now, I want to let this settle for a minute because this is so important. It applies to every area of your child's life. And what I mean is if your kids see you blowing money in the casino when they're 7, they're going to think blowing money in the casino is the way to go. I'm just giving a pretty extreme example.
Sure.
If your kids pick up messages from culture, from school, even from you as a parent early in life, you have already created a mindset, started to create a mindset in their mind. So here's some examples. Money, sex and sexuality, and marriage, I think, are the 3 big ones. Yeah. So let's talk about money. If at 5, 6, 8, 10, 11 years old, especially when they hit that 7, 8, 9-year-old window, they start kind of processing life a little differently. If they watch how you spend money, they watch if you give, you take, you serve. They watch how you tip. They watch how what restaurants you go to, whether you always eat out, whether you're struggling to pay they're watching that lifestyle.
They're sponges. They're just soaking it all in.
Yeah. Or they hear you say things like, we can't afford that. But then they watch how you spend other money when they're 10 years old. Like, wait a second, you can't afford that, but we're spending.
Exactly.
Or they realize the stress level in your home because you can't pay your bills, but you're spending $300 on a baseball bat for them to play somewhere. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying they pick up on that stuff, and it's confusing to them. The 2 though that I want to focus on more than money is sex and sexuality. I did a series a few weeks back where I talked about the national sex education standards adopted by the 40% of school districts in America. And they're introducing kids as early as like kindergarten and first grade to transgender ideology.
Gosh.
So if first messages are the most potent, they're the ones that stick the most. Mm-hmm. It's the ones that shape your mindset. So we have to get ahead of things. Here's what I say to parents. Talk to your kids about things that you don't think they're ready to talk about. Yeah. Now, you have to talk to them on their level. And there's some books we can recommend about sex and sexuality, about, when and how to talk to them at what age and how you're designed and what body parts are, 3 to 5 years old, how God created. And so we've done that with our kids. But they're going to see messages earlier and earlier in life.
Yeah.
This is why the average boy in America is exposed to pornography between 9 and 11 years old.
Gosh.
Depending on which study you look at. Okay, so now a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old seeing naked women as they're going in to puberty. Okay, that, if you have not sheltered and gotten the mindset, they get to develop what they perceive in that moment based on a 9 or 10-year-old's mind.
Yeah.
So first messages are the most important. When we talk about 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and we talk about body parts, and we talk about various things, and we talk about who are you allowed to take who's allowed to take you to the bathroom, who's not allowed to take you to the bathroom. Because, you can talk about God's design, and then we can talk about the enemy's sin, sin from Satan, the end of the world because of Satan and Adam and Eve's conversation. Like, first messages are most important. I remember when my boy was, one of my boys were 7, 8, 9 years old, and we were in line at some store, and, they had magazines up and some pretty risque looking, I think it was maybe a bathing suit or something. And I just watched one of my boys just stare at it. And I was like, women are pretty, aren't they? Versus like, stop looking at that. You see that? See how it's like, stop. That's evil. That's sinful. You should feel shame. I said, God made women beautiful, right? So then we had a conversation about how all your life, you're going to be drawn to women. You're going to be drawn and attracted to something. And in our culture, that's attracted to, you put it down however you want. And I said, but you're going to have to decide whether you're going to honor God or you're going to fulfill the desires that aren't godly. And so at 7, 8, 9 years old, we're having these conversations.
Love how you frame that.
And so, so I think let's take that into marriage. Your kid, you say you want them to grow up and be successful and get married and have babies, but they're going to watch your marriage. My boys, Julie and I's marriage is not perfect. There's not a perfect marriage. Do we fight? Yes. Do we have disagreements? Yes. Do we have to work through those things? Yes. Am I different than she is? Than she did? Yes. All those things are true. But my boys want what we have. And I'll tell you, they look at other families and they don't want what they have.
Yeah.
They watch the affection. They watch how you talk to each other. They watch how you forgive each other. And so the 9-year-old who hears in the back room mom and dad talking about divorce, it's a traumatic experience. Now, I don't want to overuse the word trauma here, but it's a traumatic experience unless it's circle back and say, hey, we had an argument. We had a situation. We shouldn't have said that. Like that message is so important. And so I would just simply say, if you're going to gradually transfer dependence from yourself onto God, you're going to have to be candid, open, honest, and have deep-rooted conversations along the way. I'll be curious on your experience, and then we'll circle back to the last one here. How did that play itself out in your life? Like, did you have open and candid conversations, or as a boy figuring out life, did you just kind of have to figure out some things on your own?
I really had to figure some things out on my own. My parents got divorced when I was 8. And so I vividly remember the evening my dad walked out of our house with all of his clothes and not knowing kind of what's happening, and how my mom sat us down and kind of was trying to explain to us that our dad was leaving. And so I didn't really, there's a lot of tension there growing up. I was 8. And so a lot of tension. I wanted to live with my dad when I was older. And then it's just a bunch of stuff that I kept in. And so I didn't ask a whole lot of questions. I just defaulted to trying to figure that out on my own.
Yeah. So 8 years old, dad walks out.
Yeah.
And now your view of marriage is shaped.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately. Your view of trust is shaped. Your view of what has been told to me all my life. Is this truth? Is it lie? Whether or not you're processing all these things, right? And you don't know. You have confusion. So that one moment at 8 years old, you can apply that to anything related to marriage or sex and sexuality. That makes an impression.
Yes.
You literally said, I vividly remember. I remember having a conversation. I was 11 years old. This is almost embarrassing to say, but it is what it is, and I think vulnerability matters. I had heard a word at school, and I didn't know what it was. And Mom, I love you, but I'm going to say this. I went home to my mom, and I told her, I heard this word. What does it mean? And she goes, what? And I felt like, oh, God. What did I do wrong? I just heard a word. So then she asked me a series of questions, and she said, you're not ready to talk about that. I'm like, I kind of am. I just came to you.
Yeah.
So that led me on a journey of like, what does this word mean? What does that mean? You see that? So learning from that. Now, luckily, by the grace of God, I didn't, go down the wrong road. But there was
a lot of kids will
curiosity.
If my parents are going to tell me, I'll find out on my own.
So the message I received, my parents are good parents. They love me. They did a lot of great things. But listen, my parents' generation weren't taught these things. And so that's why we're making it casual conversations. If your kid asks, you need to talk to them, and you need to be candid with them, and you need to come from a biblical worldview with them. And that's the problem is a lot of times we don't know how to do that. And so, everything from my boys, I'll give you some we didn't make any bones about how, when they're 3 to 5 years old, the body parts of humanity, male and female, God created them. That's, so now when my boy's 11 and he hears the Mr. Beast conversation about transgender, he's like, well, I guess no more Mr. Beast, because I know my biblical worldview and I know you don't allow those things to creep into my biblical world, so we're pushing that out. He makes that decision 11 years old on his own. Dad didn't have to say, stop doing that. So then, 5 to 7, how babies are made and what's happening and all that. They kind of learn this whole process. And then all of a sudden they get to 8 to 10 years old and they're starting talking about how your body changes. Yeah. They're talking about puberty and how it changes for boys and how it changes for girls. And so then it leads to conversations I'll never forget. When my oldest first understood what sex was, he was like, wait a second, let me ask some questions. And so I went and got Julie and I was like, hey, come on in here. And she's like, oh gosh. So we're both in there. He's like 10 years old.
Yeah.
He's like 10 years old and he knows this stuff. And he's like, oh my gosh, he just can't fathom.
Yeah.
But open dialogue and conversations. Now we're in the potential dating phase. Conversations back and forth.
Yeah.
But because first messages are the most potent messages, there's a safety there. Yeah. To have those conversations.
And it's so important to have conversations with your kids when they're dating. So many parents are like, oh, my kid's dating. I'm here if they need me.
No, yeah.
And then they'll just figure things out on their own. And a lot of times they're figuring things out on their own. And then once you realize that, it's too late.
Yep.
And so having that dialogue with your kids are so important.
So I think this is a hard part for me as a pastor because my kids know I talk about them a lot. There's a lot of pressure on them. We live in a glass house. This is why I get very irked and irritated when people criticize my family because I'm very vulnerable of what I put my kids out there knowing people watch them. Yeah. And I do it because I think, not because they're perfect kids, not because it's a perfect family, because we have our flaws, but I don't put them out there to have darts thrown at them. Yeah. And so I don't put him out there for people to say, he just talks about his family all the time. No, I'm talking about my family because families are jacked up and we're trying to be a good example. But I remember, Jace, just as he's going through this season, and we're talking about dating and we're talking about various things. He knows he can't date till he's 16, but he made the comment about dating and some of those things even now. And he's like, it's kind of silly for me to date because I'm not going to get married for 5-6 years anyway. Why would I just, and I'm like, doesn't mean he doesn't like girls. I mean, he's already talking to a girl, but those are just conversations that he could screw it all up tomorrow. I get it, but it's not because he don't know better. And not because it's not just about me saying, do as I say, not as I do. Like he knows. Yeah. And now it's his choice. And that's why I think there's some safety net when they get this age, because we're at the season where it's like, yeah, we've kind of transferred dependence onto God. Not that they're fully there at 16. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But the dialogue, the open, candid conversations are very much there. And dating is still very much with mom and dad, if that happens, if and when it happens. So here's the last one I would say, and then we'll move on. Parent your child's heart, not their behavior.
Oh, that's so good.
Parent your child's heart, not their behavior. I mentioned this in the series, but I've mentioned this multiple times, and I'm going to say them again. We don't have 80 rules at our house because your kids don't. Oh, can I jump on the couch? Can I jump on the bed? Can I jump over the couch? Can I lay on the bed? Can we wrestle? I mean, stop this, stop that. Don't do this, don't do that. No is what we tell kids all the time. Here's what we say. We don't give them a bunch of no's and a bunch of don't do's. We give them 4 do's, 4 rules that everything falls under. So we say self-control. Have self-control. By the way, if the world would just have self-control, this would be a much better place. Yeah. All the things we just talked about with sex and sexuality, with money, that if we just had self-control, families would be better, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so respect. Have respect. That's not don't do, stop doing. It's have respect. So we say have respect for your parents' furniture, for your mom when you're talking to her, for your dad. Have respect for your teammates. Have respect. Yeah. This is why he's playing travel basketball, and I'm just being honest. There's some conflict. He's very frustrated with some other kids, and I'm like, okay, how are you going to respect him? Yeah. He's 11 years old, and he's like, he gets in the car and he's mad, but he didn't let it lash out. Self-control and respect. Yep. And then we say obey the first time. So that was kind of early in life. Obey the first time because A before B. If you don't do A, then you don't do B. Right. So if I ask you to do something, you don't do it. So hey, it may be like, hey, I need you to get your room clean before we leave today. Okay. Not like go do it right now. You better do it. If you don't do it, I'm right behind you. It's like I'm gonna give you because again, we're transferring dependence. At some point, they got to take on responsibility. And so guess what? If we're supposed to go to practice and we go in there and his room's not clean, he got to call. He got to tell his coach, I got in trouble. So A before B, just little stuff like that. And we're not micromanagers on like Trey's bad about leaving his clothes around the house. I mean, it's just kind of who he is. It's like we don't beat him up for stupid. Like it's the things that matter that we're going after, right?
Sure.
And then what's the last? Honest always. That's the one I haven't said. I tell my kids all the time, the foundation of everything we have is built on trust.
Yep.
There are a lot of beautiful houses with bad foundations. And I think honestly, if you're not honest with me, it doesn't matter how bad it is. And if I'm not honest with you, it doesn't matter how, that comes with me even not being transparent and open with my kids about things and being candid with them. I got to be honest with them about what this world, if I don't have honesty, it's all going to eventually crumble. Yeah. And so those are the only 4 rules we have. And people ask all the time, what are your 4 rules? What are your 4 rules? I promise you, if you'll keep it simple, it will bode well for you. Because we can say, hey, what are you doing? I'm not having self-control. You know, and I wouldn't have to say that much with our 16-year-old anymore, but our 11-year-olds, hey, okay, respect. Those are the 2 big ones. Honest always and obey the first time. They're usually pretty good about that now. Those are a little more for when they're younger. But yeah, so they're going to have to decide, are you going to be honest always with your spouse? You going to have self-control with your spouse? Yeah. You're going to have respect? Yeah, same sort of, it's hard issues.
We have that list on our fridge, so we've got it ready. I know Hadley's only 8 months, but we're working on it.
Yeah, wait till about 2 years when she first starts lying, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so here's what we'll talk about in part 2 of this, and we'll circle back next week to this. I'm going to just continue the advice for parents. We're going to talk about some family values. It'll be just some things we do in our family. Maybe spur some people on to like agree. We have values in our church, values in our staff, and we agree upon those, and we'll talk about that in our next episode. So listen, if this is valuable to you, or you got parents, new parents, or families in your family that have kids, share this with them, and also tune in the coming weeks. If you have teenagers, graduates, young adults, we're going to be talking to them, and then we'll finish this particular group of episodes out as we talk about finances in the coming week. So like and subscribe, share this, help us get the word out. This has been incredible for us as we've seen the impact it's making. I know so many of you send us messages saying you listen every week, you're looking forward to it. And if there's a week where we don't drop one, we get text messages about that. So leave us a review if it's helpful. If it's not, then go away. No, just kidding. But let people know it's on all platforms, and help us get the word out about how to live the good life. We'll see you guys next time.